thank you and give you praise for allowing us to be here and your goodness, kindness, mercy, grace, everything you've given us. We pray, God, that you would help us to hear what the Spirit of God is saying to the church as always. And we'll give you the praise and all the glory and all the honor. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so tonight we're on an attitude of godliness. Okay. Um, yeah, we usually, as a backup, let me see. Give me one moment. It just usually just cuts on like power. All right, so here we go. So tonight we're going to talk about an attitude of understanding, and that's so important for us to have an attitude of understanding, or an attitude of godliness, really, an attitude of godliness. It is extremely important for us as believers to exercise that. And I've if you want my experience over the years, I noticed that a lot of times people come to church and they're like James. You remember what James said? He talked about the mirror and the person who looks at themselves in a mirror, you see. And at that moment, they kind of see what's going on. But then once they walk away from the mirror, they've forgotten what they look like, see. And unfortunately, there are many people who, once they leave church, I guess they forget they're believers. You see, they'll do things and they'll say things, and um, it's just um, really kind of sad. It's kind of the way that goes. And it happens frequently, and it doesn't really matter what you say. It doesn't matter what I say up here. I can say whatever I want. But when it's all said and done, when people leave, they're going to do and say and act exactly the way that they want to. The only trouble with that is, it's one thing to stand before me, because when you stand before me, pretty much nothing's going to happen. So that's going to be it. But one of these days, we have to stand before God, and then you got to give an account to Him. See, so that's what's very important for us to understand. And then we're going to discover, and there's one thing I really want believers to understand is that every idle word that you speak, that's what Jesus said, you will give an account of in the day of judgment. Every idle word. The word idle simply means useless. Every unnecessary word. And we know there's a bunch of unnecessary words that are used nowadays, in the vocabularies of people, and they think that it's okay to use them, but they're not. They're not, and it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. So I just want to throw that out there. Every unnecessary word. And I just want you to know I don't use those unnecessary words because those unnecessary words defile you. And that's pretty much it. They defile you before God. So as we move along, we want to talk about this having uh, an attitude of godliness. An attitude of godliness. And this attitude of godliness is also an attitude of understanding. Excuse me. An attitude of understanding, godliness and understanding. Understanding itself refers, and I got this from Merriam-Webster, uh, says that understanding refers to the ability to grasp the meaning of something, to have knowledge or insight, and to show empathy or agreement in interaction with others. That's what understanding is. And I love the word empathy. Empathy is a little different from sympathy, just a little different, because sympathy is, you have regard for what an individual is dealing with and what they're going through. You have regard for what's happening with them. Empathy, however, goes beyond regard. You have regard for what they're dealing with because you have fully experienced the same thing that they are dealing with. See, and that experience then is um, that that you feel and you have full understanding of what it's as if you're going through it yourself again because you understand what they're dealing with. So this is it's important for us to have the right and the correct attitudes. It really is as believers. If we learn that we need to be understanding, if we learn that we need to be empathetic, then and we learn to be sympathetic, then we need to leave consciously wanting to have that same sympathy, that same empathy, that same understanding when we leave. It's very important for us to have that. It's very important for us to hear it, and then it's very important for us to have it. All right. So we'll get into it, and you'll get where we're going with this in just a moment. This attitude of godliness and this godly attitude also comprises understanding. Understanding. If one thing God is very important, very concerned about, He is a God of relationships. Then He wants us to have the right relationship with one another. You know, if we are individuals, it's one thing for us to come here and sit together, and it's another thing for us not to be at odds with each other and fighting and having this issue and that issue. Then that's a problem. And if it continues to happen, then I can just tell you somebody's not learning Christ. That's right. Somebody is not learning Christ. That's very important. There's a video. I'm kind of chuckling, but it's really not funny. But there's a video where the pastor's standing up preaching, the camera's facing him. Then all of a sudden, somebody comes up out of the clear blue and punches another man who's sitting down. Just punches him. You see, and then the other guy gets up, and then they go out. They put their dukes up, and they're going at it. You see, and then the pastor, he has to stop preaching, come over and say, he said, brothers, please stop it. Please, brothers. See, calling them brothers. See, at some point, it's one thing just sit in church and listen. Anybody can do that. I'm just going to tell y'all, it's one, just sit here and hear. You see, it's one thing. But we got to do better than that. We have to do better than that, better than just hearing. You see, there's application. Now, if we don't understand application now, then you're going to fully understand it when we're standing before Him and we realize we're not going in. Because as of now, as of anyone who stands before Him now, is not going in. You know, that's just a fact. You don't want to be standing before Him. You want to be raptured out of here and taken out of here. You see, but you don't want to be standing in front of Him and then realize, you know, because if you're standing in front of Him, you're being judged. An attitude of understanding. So we're talking about David, and we'll just kind of pick up a little bit where we left off last week. The ark, you know, the Ark of the Covenant originally resided in Shiloh. Okay, that's actually the correct pronunciation of the city, not Shiloh, but it's Shiloh, and that's where it was. That's where the tabernacle was. When once they got into the Promised Land and stayed there for a while, and eventually the ark was taken out because of Eli's sons. You know, both actually it was his fault and his son's fault. It was his son's fault for what they did, and it's his fault for not stopping it because they were his sons. He could have easily stopped it. He knew what was going on, but he didn't stop it. He failed to stop them from doing so. They were just respecting God's presence and living in disobedience before God. And it's just the mercy of God that he didn't take them, because remember Aaron's sons didn't have that kind of opportunity, you see, and these young men had the opportunity to continue. Um, and so then the Philistines came in and took the ark. They attacked Israel, and of course they had no protection from God. And as a result, the Philistines took the ark back home with them, and the ark would be missing for about, again, we estimated to be about 75 years that the ark was out of Israel. Though then after that, David, now he becomes king of Israel, and he is victorious over the Philistines. God gives him victory. And once he's king of Israel, he decides we've got to bring the Ark of the Covenant back into Israel, because in doing so, then you restore the worship that God had given them to do. So that's why the Ark had to be brought back. And so David was excited. He went out and got the Ark. They made this brand new cart that nothing hasn't been used for anything before, to bring it back. He built a tent, kind of next to his palace, to house the ark. Once it was returned, I guess the old tabernacle just kind of fallen into disuse, and it was not brought from Shiloh into the city of David. So he builds a tent next to his house, and the problem is that he used an incorrect method, the cart, to bring the ark back. And then, unfortunately, there was a man who lost his life as a result of that. And so 3 months later, David discovers his error, and then he goes back again to get the ark. The ark is now at the house of Obed-Edom, and he realized it wasn't such a bad thing after all, because although Uzzah lost his life over it, Obed-Edom's house was being blessed by it. The ark was in his house, and everybody was blessed. And must have been some pretty serious things taking place for them to suddenly realize that they're blessed. And this time he brings the ark back. It's successful, and they bring it back with music. I can only imagine the kind of music they had. They didn't have the kind of music we have. But nevertheless, they enjoyed it. And, they were banging their tambourines and playing their cymbals and blowing the shofar. And David got super excited, filled with joy. And he started dancing before God. And the way it sounds, I can only imagine. There's no telling what was going on. I think I would have a headache if I did that. But he danced before God with all his might. With all his might. You see, and he was just super excited, energetic. So he was wearing a linen ephod. You see, and you might want to know what that is. So I'll show you. So put a picture of that. This is just one picture of it, and I think that this pretty much helps you to understand. He's wearing a linen ephod. Okay, now if you want to know what an ephod is actually one. It was a symbol of authority. For one thing, it was a symbol of authority. Number two, it was actually worn on the outside of the priest garment. Okay, yeah, on the outside of the priest garment. And whenever anybody wanted to inquire of God, they would put it on. You see, and they would just slip it on over their garments. You see, well, David. Now this is a depiction. This depiction kind of suggests that David had it on underneath his kingly robe. That's what this picture suggests, and that apparently the robe was cumbersome, and he took the robe off so he could just really dance with all of his might. I don't think that's a depiction. I don't think that's the way it actually happened, though. See, I don't think he had on his robe. That suggestion he takes that he's taken off a robe. And you know what? For the record, I'm gonna tell you where I got that from. I got it from a website entitled "Broken Believers." That's where I got the picture from. A website entitled "Broken Believers." I'm gonna tell you. And then there's an article there that's entitled "Scandalous Joy." Scandalous Joy. I'm gonna tell you that's a real good article. If you want to take some time to read that, uh, just take a note, make a note of it, and read it. Again, uh, broken believers. That's the name of the website. The article is very touching. It's very touching. It's about people who deal with difficulties, and they're trying to serve God, but they're serving God with difficulties. See, so that's what it's about. So this is a man who basically what he's talking about, his basic subject is he would love to dance, but he can't. He has a tough time keeping his balance and walking. But he would love to dance before the Lord. It might put some of us to shame who got two good feet, two good legs, and we won't even budge. Something to think about, huh? You see, but and he talks about he would love to do it, and he said he just really can't wait until he's in heaven with Jesus, because he says I'm going to dance with Jesus. That's what he's saying. You see, so when we're talking about dancing before the Lord, now we're not talking about these other things, okay? We're talking about dancing before the Lord and giving Him glory and worship. So now the you take some time. It's a really good read. And I recommend it. It's a really good read. So anyway, this, but I don't think that's actually what happened. I do think he was wearing the linen ephod. The Bible actually says that. I don't think he was wearing his robe over it. I think there's a reason why he was wearing uh, the the linen ephod. But I'll move along and I'll tell you in just a moment. So in the meantime, as he danced, his wife, Michal, was offended and she despised him for it. You see, if you look carefully at this picture, you'll see on the right hand side of the screen, you'll see the figure of a face and look like somebody pulling back a curtain. You see, I guess that's supposed to be Michal. And she's watching her husband, I guess, in her opinion, make a spectacle of himself. So that's something to think about. So let's read the account. We'll go to 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 14. Just read the small account of it right there. You see, it says, and David was dancing before Jehovah with all his might. And David was wearing a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. And then it happened as the ark of the Lord, or the ark of Jehovah, came into the city of David, that Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord. And it says, and she despised him within her heart. She despised him because he was dancing. Now, here's the thing about the ephod. I don't think that, again, he had a robe that he had to remove. I think that David was using it because, see, as they were bringing the ark from the house of Obed Edom, they would take 6 steps, and then he would offer a sacrifice. Then they take 6 more steps, and then they would offer a sacrifice. I think he was wearing the ephod because of the sacrifices that were being offered. See, and again, the ephod was a symbol of spiritual authority, and whenever he inquired of the Lord, when he was asking God or making some kind of request to him, he would wear it and God would answer. The priests would do the same. They wear an ephod, and they would God would answer them as they wore that ephod. See, so it's a symbol of spiritual authority. It was linen, no question, and again, it was worn over the priestly robe. You see, it was shorter than the priestly robe. That's part of it. So I believe that's what happened. So then she saw him dancing for the Lord. And I guess he was dancing so hard, the linen garment was moving around. See, just moving around in different ways, and apparently she was embarrassed and she was offended. See, uh, in verse number 20, we go to 2 Samuel 6:20. It says, "But when David returned to bless his household," so it's all over with David's coming home, and instead of her, coming out with open arms, grabbed him, "I'm so glad you're back," and whatnot. Instead, she stood back and she said, "How the king of Israel," she's being facetious here, "how the king of Israel has distinguished himself today. He uncovered himself today in the eyes of his servants' maids, as one of the foolish ones shamelessly uncovers himself." See, now you need to understand David was not trying to be disrespectful at all. See, and basically what she accused him of doing was disgracing himself in front of the servants' young daughters. That's what she was accusing him of, and it really upset her. You see, but here's the point. This is now we get into this thing about attitudes and having the right kind of understanding, an attitude of godliness, an attitude of good understanding. She totally ignored that what happened was the result of his vigorous worship, his sincere worship before God. You see, as for joy that the ark had returned, she completely ignored that. You see, she completely, so she was obviously an unspiritual woman to begin with. She completely ignored that. And here's the thing, in all honesty, if David had not been dancing and rejoicing in worship, that would have never happened. It would never happen. But it happened because he was rejoicing in worship, you see. And I don't think that they saw too much, okay, and just be honest with you. I don't think they saw more of David than, as they say, you can't unsee that. Yeah, I don't think that's what they saw. See, but I think it was just flapping up and down, may have seen his legs or something, and it was embarrassing to her. See, but as we move along, David said these words. Okay, let's go to verse 21. 2 Samuel 6:21. David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord, or before Jehovah, who chose me above your father and above all his house to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord and over Israel. Therefore, I will celebrate before the Lord." Excuse me. "And I will be more lightly esteemed than this, and will be humble in my own eyes. But with the maids, that is, the little girls of whom you have spoken, with them I will be distinguished." See, David said, look, when it comes to God, I tell you what, I'll lower myself more than that. That's what he said. When it comes to him, I will abase myself. That, you see, and yet in the eyes of the ones you're talking about, I'll have more respect. See, so something happened to her as a result of that. And we look at verse 23. It says, Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. Apparently, God didn't like it either. Didn't like her criticism of him, and he made her barren. With all the wives that David had, she was the only one who bore no children. See, so that is something to think about. You see, so this is where the first lesson on attitude comes in. When we're talking about attitude, this is where the first lesson comes in. Because see, Michal wrongly judged her husband, whom she should have respected. Now, everyone else out there, everybody else had great respect for David. And yet, she was the only one that did not hold the same respect. And she should have had the same respect for him, if not more. So that was the problem. See, she should have looked at the big picture. A lot of people, and this is what we're talking about understanding, she didn't look at the big picture. You see, David was worshiping God. He was not trying to expose himself. It's not what he was trying to do. And what she did was she ended up showing very, very little confidence in a man who had shown himself to be worthy of that confidence. See, she lacked the confidence. She had very little, and he wound up. He was definitely insulted because of her lack of confidence. It insulted him. There's no question about it. Everybody else is having a great time except her. She's the only one, and she's lacking understanding. That is the key. See, now here's the thing. So instead of rejoicing with him, she's scowling. She's got a scowl on her face, and she's really upset. Instead of rejoicing with him, exactly. You see, and that's what hurt him. That really hurt him. Especially now since he went back and brought her out of another marriage that she didn't even want to be in the first place. You remember the story? David, uh, Saul was chasing David. David was in trouble. David said, "Look, if I stay here any longer, I'm going to die." You see, he asked Michal to help her, or help him rather, to escape, which he did. Actually, I think she's the one who came to him and said, "If you stay around any longer, my father's going to kill you." You see, so she helped him to escape and to leave. And then when Saul asked her about it, she made up a story that David had threatened her. This was to keep her dad from hurting her because she was afraid of him. So she made up a story that David had threatened her. You see, and that's so. Then he ran off. Now the truth of the matter is, though, after that, Saul said, "All right," and he ended up giving her as a wife to one of his buddies. Now, this is what I'm talking about right here. At this point, she should have refused. She should have refused on the basis, I'm still married to you. He's still out there. I'm still married to David. She should have refused, but she didn't. Maybe out of fear. She didn't want to be there. Okay. But she did not refuse. And as a result, he wound up hooking her up in marriage with another man. You see, as a matter of fact, you can see that Psalms 25, verse 44. It says that then now Saul had given Michal his daughter, uh, David's wife, to Palti, the son of Laish, who was from Galim. That's what it says, Psalms 25, 44. So, so here we go. Yeah, even though, you know, let's see. Yeah, Psalm 25, 44. Wait a minute. I said Psalm. Okay. Let me do this again. I did something like that Sunday too. Uh, I'm sitting up here and I know I was talking about the commandments, and I said there were 600. I said there was 413 commandments. Now I know there's 600. I don't know why or how I said 400, but I did say 400. And I got corrected at the end of the service. You see, so I actually should have been corrected during the service. Yeah, look, I would have appreciated that correction real quick. Say, excuse me, Pastor, I think you mean 613. That would have been okay. Yeah, it's 613, not 413. And I know it's 613. Yeah. Yeah, that would have worked. But you would have had to do it backwards though. Backwards to yourself so it looks forward to me. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, so but thank you anyway for the correction. So so here I am. I'm talking about Psalms 25 and 44. It's First Samuel, everyone. First Samuel 25 and 44. Okay. First Samuel 25 and 44. Now Saul had given Michal his daughter, David's wife, to Palti, the son of Laish, who was from Galim. Right. So now that's and I'm just saying she should have refused. She, knowing better, she should have refused. So here we go. And we're just simply talking about just having the right kind of godly attitude. The Apostle Paul made it very plain that according to the law, if a man's uh, if a man is alive and his wife is married to another, she'll be called an adulteress because she's bound to him all the days of her life by the law. That's what the Apostle Paul says. He says that in Romans chapter 7. All right. So now, at any rate, we're talking about having the right attitude. Now we're going to talk about David. Okay. David here shows godly character. We're going to see the character of David. We see the attitude of Michal. It's not great, doesn't show much understanding. She's just quick to criticize him, although, again, it happened. What happened was because he was worshiping God, not because he came out, half dressed to begin with. He was dressed, but because he was worshiping God, then that's what took place. So now, one thing about David, when we're talking about having the right attitude and the right godly character, even though Saul hated David and gave David a lot of grief, I mean, a lot of grief, and David had to run. And, what was really interesting is that Saul is only after David. Saul was only after David. He wasn't after anybody else. But you know that David had great support, and you had a bunch of people out there running with him. Because we went through that story. He had all these people running with him. He had excellent support, even though Saul was only after one man. Isn't it great to have people with you when you're in trouble like that? And so he had great support. And these men, and I mean, he and their families, just dragging their families and everybody with them, as he is running from Saul. So, um, although Saul hated him, do you know that David did not hold a grudge against Saul at all? You ever pay attention to that? David did not hold any grudge against Saul at all. Saul is trying to take him out, but he refused to hold a grudge against him. And it's apparent, you know that David loved his son, Jonathan, right? Yeah, David was like a brother to Jonathan. And even though Saul was chasing David, I honestly believe that David had the same attitude towards Saul. He had to, because twice he had Saul dead to rights. And I think dead is the operative word. He had him. He had Saul 2 times, not just once, but twice. And he could have stopped the chase altogether, either one of those times. And I just want you to think about, suppose you were in that situation and Saul is chasing you, all right? And you happen to come into a cave. Well, he actually comes in the cave where you are. It's dark. He doesn't see you. And he turns his back, to use the bathroom. And it's you and him. I got somebody making motions back there. It's over, right? It's over. Yeah. Yeah, all he did was cut the robe off. Cut a piece of the robe. That's all he did. Cut a piece of the robe. And then, look, then when he cut the robe off, he felt bad about that. Just imagine. How many people would do that? I mean, would you have done it? I can't tell. I don't know that I would have done that. I don't know if I cut his robe. I would have cut something, but maybe not his robe. I'm just talking the human side of it. Remember, he's chasing you. You see, and you have a right to defend yourself. You're not chasing him, but he's chasing you. So you have a right to defend yourself. And instead of defending yourself, you're cutting off a piece of his robe. See, then he goes back out, he leaves. And then after he gets far enough away, you call him, hey, Saul, look what I got. This could have been your head. But no, it's just the robe. See, David just had a different attitude here at this point. And I can see why God called him a man after his own heart. Now, unfortunately, David did have a major slip up later on. We know that. See, but just at this point, he showed godly character. See? And then when it was all over with, he didn't have a grudge against any of Saul's family. Now, again, we're talking about monarchies and we're talking about kings. When a man is a king and he dies, the next person in line who has a right to the throne is his son. See? And also his daughters, if there are any. See? The sons first, and then if there are no sons, daughter. All right? They have a right to the throne. See? And when Saul passed away, the next person who took the throne was Ishbosheth. You see? Now, Ishbosheth, he became king, and they came, the men of Israel who came and made him king. And you know what? David didn't challenge it, even though God told David, you're going to be king. But David didn't challenge it. The reason why he didn't challenge it, because this was David's mindset. All right, God, if you made me king, then you are going to put me on the throne. I'm not going to put myself on the throne. So you've got to do that. I'm going to tell you, that attitude of David meant a lot to me as I was growing in the Lord. It meant a lot to me. It taught me something. And I learned at that point to respect individuals who had authority, to give them utmost respect, no matter what. You see, and it took that was a lesson. That was a great lesson for me. If I went back and shared with you some things, then you'd understand where I'm coming from. But here's the point. Ishbosheth was king. David did not challenge that. Later on, a couple of guys came along. We just read that, I think, last week. A couple of men came along, and they decided that they're going to maybe get on David's good side, and they assassinated Ishbosheth, trying to get on David's good side. But David didn't have that mindset. I'm not going to do that. See? And he showed no fear to the existence of Saul's heirs. So even though Saul's heirs are out there, he showed no resistance. We got 2 Samuel 9:1. Sometimes I'll forget some things and they may not, I missed them. But 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 1. Now there was a man. First Samuel. Okay, you got Second Samuel. Make that second. There we go. Then David said, "Is there yet anyone left of the house of Saul that I might show him?" What's the word? Kindness for Jonathan's sake. He still remembered that friendship he had with Jonathan. He loved Jonathan, and he had already made a pact with Jonathan. He said, "Listen, if I become king, I'm not going to hurt you. I want you to understand that." And then Jonathan said the same thing. "Yeah, you become king, I'm not going to hurt you." And they kind of made that pact. Unfortunately, Jonathan never made it because he and his dad wound up dying on the same day. But David and Jonathan, they were like brothers, and David wanted to give the kindness that he would have given to Jonathan to anybody who was left of Saul. And he didn't want to eliminate them, because of fear. And there was one individual left. Ishbosheth was assassinated. There was another man left, Mephibosheth. You see, unfortunately, Mephibosheth had damaged feet. I guess his feet were broken one day. I think somebody mishandled him. Am I saying that right? Somebody mishandled him when he was a baby and dropped him and damaged his feet. See, and I can understand that. You could see in our day, if a child was if you dropped a child and his feet were damaged, you just simply take him to the doctor, right? To a pediatric orthopedic, you see, and they'll get in there and they'll straighten those little bones out, put casts on them, and they'll come right back. Didn't have that luxury in that day. So if you damaged those feet, that was it. If you broke an arm and it was out of place, that was it. You're done. You couldn't fix it. And Mephibosheth was that young man whose feet were damaged. You see, and you know what? You think about it. If it comes to being merciful, compassionate, David was the man. And see, here was the thing. Because he was merciful and compassionate, when his time came that he needed mercy, he got it. What did Jesus teach? Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. You see? And see, remember, as you sow, you got to be careful what you sow. As you sow, you will reap. So if you sowed bad seed, yeah, you're going to reap from that bad seed. Now, if you sowed bad seed anywhere, you know what you do? You realize you planted bad seed, you go back over there and pull those bad seed up. That's what you do. See? So that you won't reap from them. Because it may not be too late to go pull them up. See? And basically, what I mean is humble yourself. This is how you pull them up. You humble yourself. Everybody say, humble myself. See, that's the hardest thing to do. Humble myself. But if you sowed bad seed, humble yourself. Go and ask for forgiveness. And then change your attitude for good. I said for good. Let me say forever. That's what I mean. Change it forever. And don't let that thing fester inside of you. Because if it festers inside of you, then that seed grows. Now you've got to reap from it. And you sowed it. You sowed it. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're talking about sowing and reaping, huh? Because you put something out there bad before and you realize bad, go yank it off. You see? But humble yourself. You know what? A lot of people, they'll change their attitude for a moment. Then they'll revert back to the old nasty attitude again. That's what happens. See, so we can't do that. Early, and some of y'all weren't here. I was talking early in church about how that, we have this mirror in front of us. It's a spiritual mirror, and we see ourselves in the mirror while we're looking at it. That's what James said. But then when we leave the mirror, we forget what it was we saw. And that I'm telling you, that's something that we really have to be cognizant of. We have to change that. See, now a lot of people are blind to their attitudes because they don't realize that they have a bad attitude. They think that their attitude is fine, and then if it's shown to them, they justify it. You can't justify a bad attitude. You can't. See, David, one thing, he didn't have a nasty attitude. He didn't have a bad attitude. See? So instead, he obviously enjoyed showing kindness. He did. He enjoyed showing kindness, and that's what he did. I want to show kindness to Saul. So if you read that, we're not going to read any part of it, but I'll give it to you in 2 Samuel chapter 9. If you read that chapter, you'll see the kindness that David showed to Mephibosheth by ordering Ziba. He had a servant named Ziba, and he ordered Ziba to plant his crops, plant Mephibosheth's crops, harvest them, take care of them. But you know what? Do it anyway. Do it anyway. But you know what? When there many times I'm going to bring him to the palace, and I'm going to let him eat in my palace. Okay. But take care of his farm anyway. Make sure he's well taken care of. Even if he doesn't eat it right away, make sure he's taken care of. The other thing that David did was he made sure that all of Saul's possessions got into Mephibosheth's hands. He made everything that Saul owned, he made sure that Mephibosheth got it all. You see, a ruthless king would have seized it all, for himself. But David made sure that Mephibosheth had everything that belonged to him. Okay. So I'm just saying that David showed that he had a good, godly attitude. And then when he needed mercy, he received mercy. See? And that's what Jesus said. Matthew 5:7. That's exactly what Jesus said here. He said, "Blessed are the merciful." And I quoted it before, but here it is again, Matthew 5:7. If you want mercy, you got to give it. If you want it, you have to give it. If you don't give it, you won't get it. And here's the thing, you have to give it before you need it. Did you hear that? You have to give it before you need it in order to get it. Now, this attitude is one that's born out of love, God's love. And what you want is for God's love to be birthed inside of you. I know that's human nature, full of pride. Pride wants something real different. It really does. Pride really wants to win, right? That's what pride wants to do. It wants to win. The problem with that is that when pride wins, you lose. You heard that, huh? Yeah, when your pride wins, you lose. See, a merciful attitude is an understanding attitude. It's not a prideful, I'm better than you attitude. It's not that at all. And an understanding attitude considers one's own self and one's own humanity. I have to consider me. If I'm really going to correct anyone, I have to consider me. If I'm going to help anybody who's having problems, I have to consider me. I have to consider me that could be me. I don't care what anybody does. I don't care how bad they are or what they do. That could be me. And it could be you. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female, old or young, what race you are, it could be you. Because we are all one thing, and that's human. And what we can say is, but for the grace of God. And you can fill in the blanks. If but for the grace of God, I could be doing this, could be me, or that could be me. I don't care what it is. You can talk about anything you want to talk about. You can talk about murder. You can talk about homosexuality. You can talk about rape. You can talk about being a drug addict. You can talk about, it doesn't matter. But for the grace of God. Because personally, we're not really all that great. Just because we came to Jesus, we're not all that great. She said it. I don't know if y'all heard her. She said, we're filthy rags. That's what we would be. That's what we are. Our righteousness. Even if we tried to be good without Jesus, the best our righteousness is filthy menstrual cloths, because that's what that is. That's what a filthy rag is. You look it up in the Hebrew, that's what you'll see. Yeah, I looked it up. That's why. Filthy menstrual cloth. That's what you are in the sight of God. As good as you try to be. I love that. But now God sees us like he sees his son. So before he saw filthy rags, and then he cleaned us up by his blood and by his word, and now he sees Jesus. I like that part. I like the part of seeing Jesus better than the filthy rag. We're talking about from God's point of view. See? Yes. Yeah. We become partakers of his divine grace. I'm trying to just get you to one thing, understand. We're righteous. God has cleaned us up, but just understand your humanity. Just understand your humanity and where you are. Because now I go back and let me help you to fully understand this and make a full circle here. Because we're talking glowingly about David right now because this is what he is. But then in time you get to that other story, the Bathsheba story, the Uriah story. See what I'm saying? Now you got the same righteous man, the same godly man. So what happened? See? And we have to understand we're the same kind of humanity. We're the same kind of humanity. That doesn't mean we don't have to do that. I don't have to follow that footstep, but I just have to understand that I'm the same humanity. And we can't really be so, as we grow in righteousness and godliness, we can't get to a point where we start looking down on people who aren't where we are. You understand? Who are not in Jesus, and they're doing all sorts of things, and oh, that's disgusting, that's terrible, as if I'm better. See? Now I can understand that that's terrible from the standpoint of what happened, and that it is degrading and disgusting and whatnot, but not in a way where I'm lifting me up. See the point? Not in that way. Doesn't work that way. So having an understanding attitude, I'm going to repeat what I shared in the beginning from Merriam-Webster. Understanding refers to the ability to grasp the meaning of something, to have knowledge or insight, and to show empathy or agreement in interactions with others. Just simply being understanding our humanity. Just that simple. And let's be like Jesus. Jesus also came and he understands our humanity too. He understands the feeling. The Bible says he was tempted in all points, just like we are, yet without sin. So he understands that humanity. So then it goes on to say, therefore, he is able to help us. That's right. He is able to help us to overcome those temptations because he understands. Amen. So let's learn to be understanding people, understanding godly people. Amen. Any questions or comments? Yeah. Got three. All right, we start. Okay, we'll start, sister. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mhm. 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 Slow to speak, slow to anger. Mhm. Right, right, and that's what he does gently. Okay, Nish. Mhm. He who knew no sin became sin that we might